contrast that back to compact. We can also show it in a tabular form if you prefer this layout. Same data, just different ways of displaying it. If you want to make it even easier on the eyes, you can add a blank line that will go after every one of these main labels. And I can also remove that. If I don't want to see row headers, I can remove the row headers. Same with column headers. If I click there, it makes it easier to see. Just removes the color. Banded rows. Sometimes that's an easier way to print. It allows things to pop out versus banded columns. That might be the way to go. And of course, you can change the styles. As I roll over it, it gives you an idea of what it's going to look like. Ooh, how about that? Not bad, huh? Keep in mind, of course, you're in the context of Excel, so you can do anything you want on any of these other ribbons. But these pivot table tools are meant really to focus in on your pivot tables. I like what we've done so far. I'm going to click the Save button. Let's go ahead and create another pivot table. I'm going to go to a new fresh sheet. Make sure I'm in my Insert ribbon, choose Pivot Table. This time, I'm going to grab information from an external data source. I have an Access query that has data that I'd like to view as a pivot table. I'll choose the connection because really that's the only thing that I can do. I already have this connection in here. It's my food orders complete. I'm going to go ahead and select that and choose Open. This looks good to me. Where do I want this? In the existing worksheet? Sheet 3, starting in cell A1? That would be fine with me. Okay, so here again, same creation, but now my data source is located in a different file. Here are all the fields from my external data source. My external data source has to do with food orders that I have for my zoo. So, what would I like to see in here? I'd like to see the name of the food that I order. I'd like to see the company that I order that from. In fact, I'd like to have let's move this out here so I can have a little bit more real estate space. I'd like to see my company at the top. I'd like to see the order date. In fact, I'd like to see the order date for the company. I'd like to see the quantity here. Maybe I'd like to see the price. I've got a lot of information going on here. All right, I'm going to double click on this to dock it back over there. In fact, actually, I'm going to close it so we have more space. Okay. A lot of information. I've got all my orders for the cattle rancher outlet. Here's my bananas. Those are the quantities that I have on hand. Where did I order them from? All right. Mostly from farm produce. Here's my total bananas from farm produce, so I can scroll on down. I'm not really liking this layout of information. Let's bring the field list back and remove the price. I'm going to put quantity over here, and now I can see a little bit better. Here are my orders for cattle rancher outlet. Probably steak is more likely going to come from the cattle rancher outlet instead of bananas. So what do I have? The sum of all my quantities on my orders. And then overall, my total, I've ordered 207 steaks, or orders of steak, however many I order from my zoo, from the cattle rancher's outlet. That's a little bit too hard to read. I can remove the order date here, and now I'm just looking at numbers. So hopefully you get the idea of how I can really analyze my information in a better manner. Maybe I want to change this to show up as currency. All right. Okay, so we used data from an external source. We used data from a worksheet that existed in the same spreadsheet. We really have to have a plan beforehand of why we'd want to use a pivot table, and then we just take some time to move items around. Let's now create a chart. I'll go back to my Insert ribbon, and I'll choose the command Pivot Chart. What range would I like? I'm going to go back to my pivot whoops, to my inventory. Now I could select, by the way, I could just type in the name of that range. Have to spell it correctly though. Pivot source. I'll choose OK. I could have just typed it in here as well. I'd like this chart to go into a new worksheet. I'll choose OK. I'm starting from scratch. It is going to have a pivot table behind the scenes. Here's my chart that is going to be built. I'll move this so we can see it a little bit. I've got my pivot chart filter pane. I'm going to close this for now so we have more real estate. I'm going to start from scratch. I'd like to see the product, and I'd like to see the sizes. I'd also like to see the quantities. Now we're getting somewhere. All right, so it's a little bit muddled together there. So if we put size in the legend fields, now we see all of our products, and we see our sizes are based off of color. So for this baseball cap, I can zoom in a little bit so we can see it. Ooh, that was a little much, wasn't it? How about, well, how about just a little bit more? Okay, so baseball cap, we've got 2 entries. I could change the type of chart that I have. I'm in my pivot chart tools. I've got now 4 new tabs. If I go to change chart type, I can change and make this stacked. Now instead of multiple bars, I don't see the prices either. I see the percentage that these sizes are of our total golf shirt classic, for example. I can figure out that almost 30% of my golf shirt microfiber are the large entries there. What if I'd like to also see the color involved in that? Okay, so that bumped color down here, but I could bump color over here. And now in my legend, I have even more information. I've got my extra large in white, my extra large in red, my extra large in blue. And of course, again, that's the percentage of the quantity that I have in stock. So I have lots of different types of golf shorts. I offer lots of that, but my baseballs, I really only offer one item. So 100% of my baseballs are not applicable. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? I, of course, have all the tools that I had available before. I do have my pivot table behind the scenes that I could work with. I could do some filtering. And I have all of these chart tools available to me. I could go back and select different data. I could go to a quick layout. Maybe I'd like to see built into this chart the actual data sheet as well. You need a lot of real estate to have that displayed. But maybe I'd like to see it just in a different layout, a different manner. I could change my styles. My color coding could be way different. Wow, that looks almost like candy, like hard candy. That looks yummy. I can go to my layout and I can change all these items. Do I want to see the legend at the left instead of at the right? What about the titles to my axes? Do I want to have a title down here that's called perhaps products? What about my overall chart title? Maybe I want to put one in here that's called pivot table, or the date, or something like that. And that, of course, is in the way, so I'm going to choose none. I don't want to mess up any information. I can change the format for my various selections. If I select all of my labels at the bottom and choose format selection, I can change all of these various items. I'm going to choose close there. I don't want to really mess with this chart too much. We have a whole other nugget on how you can work with charts. I just want to show you that you still have all of these chart tools available to you when you insert a chart. This was the field list that we were working with all along. We also have the pivot chart filter. Maybe I'd like to only see my baseball caps and my baseball gloves. If I choose OK, now I get to pinpoint exactly what it is that I'm after. I could go back and choose select all there and choose OK. My legend fields, maybe I want to sort and only see my extra large information. All right, I've got a large amount of extra large batting gloves there and a lot of tennis shorts there that are extra large as well. So extra large white, extra large blue is what I have a lot of. If I go back here, I can choose select all as well. In this example, we made a pivot chart from scratch. But you could also base a pivot chart off of a table that you had already created. You make sure you have a cell selected within the table, and then you go into your options area and choose pivot chart. From here I could choose this stacked chart again, which by the way is the default that Excel likes to give you. It's kind of messy again, so we could go back and do all the various items that we had done before. We could rearrange the fields and make changes. We could go back to Analyze again and choose our field list, and maybe we don't want to see all this information. Of course, everything that we did before is the same thing that we can do now. It's just going to take a while for me to get it back exactly like how it was. I'm going to click the close on this. If you did create a chart and it was here and you didn't want to keep it, you could always move it by going back to the Design tab, choosing Move Chart, and throw this into a new sheet within this same worksheet. There's Pivot Chart 1, Pivot Chart 2. No doubt about it, this one looks a little bit better. I could spend some time and modify this and have it look more pleasing to the eyes and really actually understandable. Wouldn't that be rude to print that out and give it to my audience? All right, so pivot charts, pretty cool. You have your data source. You grab your command from the insert ribbon. You can throw it in the same sheet, on a different sheet. When you have it selected, you've got more tools available to you than what you do when you're normally in Excel. It's a separate object, it's dynamic, it can be updated when your source data is updated. And of course, if you want to go that extra step and make a pivot chart, that just might be the best way to explain your information to an audience. We really did quite a bit here. Let's review. The first thing we did, of course, was we inserted a pivot table from scratch. It was a great way to analyze our sport inventory. We modified it using the different commands that are evident on the ribbons. We even brought in some information from an Access database. And of course, we weren't complete until we had a graphical representation of our pivot table. We created a pivot chart pretty easily. It's easy to create all of these pieces of information. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.